Know that the experience is going to be unlike anything you've ever experienced. The closest analog would be dreaming, but it's also very, very different from dreaming. Fear and the ego facing the possibility of being dissolved.
I love a margarita still, but I was using it to mask my feelings
that veterans have gone through. And so it does transcend this political divide.
Trying to explain your experience to somebody I have found is almost pointless. And I've started to kind of give up on it and just be like, you just got to, experience it for yourself.
Humanity has taken this path. We've lost touch with that spiritual essence. It's like people have figured all this stuff out for a long, long time. And it's cool that it's now reemerging at this time, and it feels cosmically appropriate.
Welcome back to the Tim Teaches podcast. I'm your host, Tim McCoy. Today, I am joined by Keith Gilmore. Keith is an author, speaker, coach, and president of the Portland Psychedelic Society. Today, we're going to be diving into culture, ethics, psychology, spirituality, and psychedelics, and wherever else it takes us. If you find value in this content, please share it, leave a comment. I appreciate it. It helps this channel grow. So, Keith, welcome to Tim Teaches.
Tim, thanks for having me.
We could start this thing off with a whole bunch of questions. The Portland Psychedelic Society. I'm down in Southern Oregon, and I've never heard of it, but now I'm interested. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about that and what that's all about? And then I'm going to back you all the way up and figure out how the hell you got into psychedelics.
Yeah, well, Portland Psychedelic Society, it's a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're actually just in our 10th year of existence now, which is cool because the landscape regarding psychedelics was very different 10 years ago. And the purpose of the organization is to provide places for people to build community, to provide education, and to help people integrate and make sense of their own psychedelic experiences. We do around 24 regular, recurring monthly events, different support and integration circles, got yoga, breath work. We do all kinds of one-off events. Just had a guy do a 3-hour workshop on the San Pedro cactus.
All right.
So it's helping people to figure out how to approach psychedelics. And of course, it's helping people to connect with other people who are interested in this niche that is certainly growing and expanding into the mainstream.
Yeah, it's exploding. I'm very new to this whole psychedelic thing. Basically, my first experience was about a year and a couple months ago, and I started out with, I've done marijuana as a kid and everything, and then I went straight to ayahuasca, and we can get into that and talk about that later. Man, that's pretty cool. How's the city received you guys? I know there's all kinds of, the federal laws in the United States are kind of all over the place, they're not all over the place. They're pretty black and white, but Oregon, wonderful state when it comes to thinking outside the box. And so they've treated you guys well, and they're not giving you any problems.
No, it's a very well-received organization, and we're just here to help people learn and grow and have a fun time. So yeah. It hasn't really ruffled any feathers since I've been involved. We started a kind of sister organization, a 501c4, which is a nonprofit organization type that can do political action. And that group is going to be aiming to change some of the local Portland rules around psychedelics. So hopefully creating a safer environment for people to be utilizing these things in ways that they see fit.
Right on. Yeah, I know. I'm close to Ashland. I'm sure you're familiar with Ashland, and And so they have like a ayahuasca church up there, which I've only looked at their website, but I'm like, I might need to go up there and see what they're all about. So it's pretty there. This movement, and I feel like it is really a movement. It's like a transformation in society, is really changing everybody's perspective on psychedelics and the potentials and benefits of them, you know. And I've told everybody, they may not be for everybody, you know, like you gotta choose your own path and do your own research. This isn't medical advice, and we're not promoting drugs here, but but we are promoting healing and helping people and finding their own path to whatever journey they're on. So I'm super excited about that, and I'm excited that I've never heard of this Portland Psychedelic Society. So I'm up in that area, and so I'm going to be popping in there. And you mentioned breath work and yoga and all that other stuff, and I literally just had a conversation with my wife. She wants to get into breath work and teaching that, and she's trying to figure out how to go about that. So I'm like, man, there's resources out there. We just need to find them, and here you are. So maybe you can point us in the right direction. That's pretty cool. But I'd like to kind of back it up a little bit and hear about you and who you are, where you're from, and how you kind of got into this space, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm from the East Coast, from New England, and grew up there, went to school out there, came out to the West Coast in 2014, kind of New Year's 2014. So it's been, I guess it's 11 years now that I've been out West. And the psychedelics I got involved with just in my own personal journey of seeking. I've always been a seeker, very curious. And when I got introduced to mushrooms, it just kind of exploded a dormant aspect of me and allowed me to connect with something that felt like I was remembering something I already knew, which is one of the most fascinating things about the psychedelic experience. In my experience, it almost always feels like I am remembering things rather than learning new information.
Yep.
And so I found that very fascinating, and I still do, and started exploring many different modalities and ceremonial contexts and trying the Terence McKenna heroic dose, 5 grams in silent darkness, trying that modality and kind of many things in between. Dancing is amazing on psychedelics. It's like people have figured all this stuff out for a long time, and it's cool that it's now reemerging at this time, and it feels cosmically appropriate or karmically appropriate in the way that the state of the world seems to be very dire in a lot of ways. And we're needing to proceed from this point forward very carefully and intentionally, because we do carry world-ending power as human beings, and the ideological structures that have people at each other's throats can turn things in a bad direction. And yet the psychedelics are reemerging at this very same time, almost as a counterbalancing force to put us back in touch with ourselves, to put us back in touch with our heart, to remind us that we're all part of one human family, to connect us in communion with one another and help us to forgive and transcend the limits that we're putting on ourselves, and ultimately imagine and co-create a more beautiful way of doing things. So this is where my passion for the psychedelic work comes from, is in the recognition that this is a way for humanity to get through this time right now, and to do it properly and in a beautiful and harmonious way, despite everything that's going on.
You just articulated everything that I think, but I haven't been able to put to words. So I appreciate you saying it for me, because I feel like we're literally on that path. I mean, the world is so crazy and so lost, and I say that in a spiritual way. Like people, people are lost, and you know, religion, religion, spirituality, all those things. To me, they're kind of two different paths. Like there's religion, and then there's spirituality, and there's God, and you know sometimes those two things don't intersect properly. And so I think that the psychedelics are helping to merge those two things together. And I am a spiritual person, but I am a believer in God, and I believe in a higher power, and Jesus, and everybody has their own path, and their own spiritual. But I kind of believe like almost all of those paths are very all leading us to the same place, whichever way you get there, as long as you're doing it with the right intention and motivation. So yeah, I think it's kind of cosmically funny that, God or our higher power is like, okay, we'll just use this avenue of approach. If this one didn't work, he's smarter than all of us, and so that's where I'm coming from. Um,
Yeah, I like that, Tim. I mean, I do think that fundamentally there is a spiritual essence that underpins all of the psychological um, life that we have, and that, and certainly underpins the political domain and all of this. It's like when you really get down to the crust of the planet, of the human entity, there's a spiritual component there, and that's it can be a very ambiguous term, and rightly so, because who can say what the nature of that is? But it's there, and we deny it at our peril. And I think that that's one of the, if not the main reason that we find ourselves in this mess, is that humanity has taken this path of of physicalism, of materialism, of saying that all that is matter, and we've lost touch with that spiritual essence, which allows us to see the world as an expression of divinity that is to be revered and treated with love and respect, rather than as just some resource to be utilized. So I agree with you, and I think that that's one of the beautiful things that the psychedelics present, and even the scientific world has to reckon with this reality, and they're finding that the people who have the best outcomes in the psychedelic therapeutic sessions are the ones who have the so-called mystical experience. And so now we're in this position where it's like science has had to come up with a definitional way of explaining a mystical experience, and that's kind of cool. And they have
yeah,
like their criteria, but ultimately it's all ineffable. And anyone who's had a psychedelic experience will tell you that it can't be put into words, and it's not a teaching, it's not a dogma. It's something that has to be experienced, and it's very individual and personal, and yet it's very collective as well, because it really puts you in touch with the reality that we're all part of one human family in this together. So why don't we figure it out together?
yeah. And trying to explain your experience to somebody, I have found is almost pointless, and I've started to kind of give up on it and just be like, you just got to, experience it for yourself, because it's so. For me, I've only done, I've done a couple of microdose mushrooms, but I've only done ayahuasca, and I've done it 13 times, and each experience is a little bit different, but the overall overarching theme is like, we're we, we are part of a giant cosmic experience that, is very hard to explain, but we're all connected. We're all in this together. And, to me, it's a battle. There's a battle going on in spirituality for humanity, good or evil, however you want to describe it. I mean, it's for, it, some people may not like to hear that, but I really think that's what's going on. Um, and that kind of leads me over real quick. I see that like Heroic Hearts follows you, and a lot of veterans are getting a lot of healing from psychedelics. And, I think back on these wars that we had for 20 plus years, and I think, it was terrible. And I was part of that. And, it was, it's, it's sad, and that's the mildest word I can think of. But out of that, all these veterans who have experienced PTSD and anxiety and depression and stuff, we're starting to lead the charge on this psychedelic renaissance. And so, maybe I think some good is actually coming out of it, whatever, for all the bad that happened, there is a lot of good that's coming of this, and people are starting to open their eyes. And when you have, some of these really high profile guys who are out there talking about it and normalizing it and making it okay to talk about, because I mean, when I was a kid, if you talk about mushrooms or, we would joke around and whisper about it, but it was under, it was hush hush. And so I think that, it's good that it's out in the open now and people are able to talk about it and have these experiences, because, they are spiritual experiences. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And shout out to Heroic Hearts. They're doing some really powerful and profound work helping veterans. And I know some of the guys involved with that organization, and it's really powerful and meaningful. And I think that it's a smart way to get other people who might otherwise be very averse to even the idea of psychedelics, of, oh, you're taking drugs. And this is the approach MAPS took too, is why don't we work with veterans, which is a group that, regardless of your political affiliation, people have, respect for the extreme difficulty and traumatic reality that veterans have gone through. And so it does transcend this political divide. And when people are seeing their loved ones come back to life,
yeah,
after perhaps being in the throes of PTSD, it's like, what is this? I need to go tell the world. Oh, really?
Literally. That was me. So, I mean, I don't know if you did any research on me, and that it's okay if you didn't. I'll give you the brief on me. I mean, so I was a Iraq veteran, came back with a lot of PTSD from that, then lost my brother in a car accident a couple of years later, depression from that. I was in law enforcement as a reserve deputy for almost 10 years, or about 10 years, had some really traumatic stuff happen with that. So at the end of the day, I mean, I was full of anxiety, PTSD, depression, just wrecked on all kinds of medication from the VA. And, I tried counseling, all this stuff, and nothing worked, except for margaritas. And, that didn't actually work. I love a margarita still, but, I was using it to mask my feelings and, and mask everything. And so my brother-in-law is actually affiliated with the ayahuasca retreat down in Costa Rica. And I don't know, you may have heard of it. It's a place called Rhythmia. And they're top notch in the they're top notch. They do a great job down there. And so I didn't know anything about ayahuasca, didn't do any psychedelics, and he hadn't even been in it very long. I mean, he'd been my brother-in-law for over 10 years, and all of a sudden with it, the last 2 years, I'm like, what the hell is going on with this guy? He's like way different, and he was always a great guy, but I noticed a major change in him, and then come to find out, he's a very successful business guy, and come to find out, like, his wife tried ayahuasca, but he's like, I'm going to the best place, that's medically licensed, and, like, I feel safe trying this, because he wanted to try it out. And so he went down there and it changed his life. And so he ended up investing in this thing, and I didn't even know about it, literally, because he's in a different state, and we talk, at Thanksgiving for 10 minutes, and that's my whole experience with him, and then he just hits me up. He's like, hey man, I'm invested in this. Would I'm going down here. Would you like to come down with me and try it out? And ayahuasca, like, for real? And I had heard about it on Joe Rogan and, Sean Ryan show and some of these other places. And I was just in such a bad place myself that I was like, yeah, dude, sure. Why not? I'll try anything. Like, I'm at that point. And I went down there, and, I've told this a handful of times, almost every podcast, because it changed my life. I mean, it was the most incredible, healing, profound thing I've ever experienced. And it's not because my brother-in-law is he's on the board of directors and kind of a co-owner with the place. Like, aside from that, I would recommend this to anybody, wherever you do it, if it's in the right, safe setting and you have the appropriate people around you. But it was literally just night and day. It changed my life that quick. And I mean, life still happens, and new things pop up, and you got to deal with them. But all that previous crap, gone, done with, healed. I know it happened to me, but it doesn't affect me. Like, it does not affect me. And so I had to go back, and I had to go back again. And I've been down there. I've done it 13 times now, but I've been down there 3 times. It's a week long, ceremony or event. And so, but it was life changing. And I've also I wrote out my whole entire experience every night on the first journey. It was crazy. I mean, it was wild. And but before I went to bed, I would like write out what I saw, what I experienced, in just insane. But I shared that with some people around me, and they ended up reading that and going, dude, I want to try this. And they saw the shift in me, and some of them have gone down and experienced it and got amazing healing themselves. Not even war PTSD, but PTSD from abuse and just trauma and loss and all kinds of stuff. And so I want to say it's magic. Like, it's but I don't know how else to explain it. It saved my soul. It saved obviously my mom listens to this. Mom, I understand. Jesus saves my soul, but this healed my soul. That's a better way to put it. This reconnect me with who I was and who I lost. And it really did. It changed my life. And so that's the whole reason I'm doing this podcast, is because of that experience. And because I'm just sharing that. I don't make a penny off of this thing. Literally, it costs me money to do this, and I don't care, because I am trying to spread that message. And like, if you're out there and you need help, these are the people who are helping. Guys like you are spreading this message, and you're doing a good job. So continue on. I want to hear more about you, less about me. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really incredible. And it's, a case in point of this whole thing. There is such great potential for healing. And I think you're right that magic is the best equivalency that we can say about this, because it's so utterly mysterious and so utterly otherworldly, and yet at the same time so deeply human and earthly. But it's yeah, it's truly ineffable. And, I think it's always important to just acknowledge the reality that it's also not a panacea that is going to cure everything and help everybody. And that there are some people for whom this wouldn't be the right path to take.
Yep.
And that's the reality of it. However, the potential for helping is just unrivaled. There's nothing else that exists in the world that is able to help this many people this quickly, which is why being in such a dire state in this world where things are just continuing to speed up faster and faster and faster. And it feels like, the train is rickety on the tracks and it's just going faster and faster. And who knows where that's leading. We need the type of help that the psychedelics can provide in this rapidly shifting way, because, things like psychotherapy, it's a amazing modality. And I'm glad that more and more people seem to be moving into that to give their own inner world its due. However, it's a lit match compared to a forest fire in terms of the
Yes.
ability of it to transform people.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
an excellent way of explaining it. Excellent, because it's like, yeah, those things are cool and all, but if you haven't tried this and you're espousing, psychotherapy, and nothing against them, but it's a match to a forest fire. Like, literally, it's no comparison. And I feel like, for me, I found true healing, not just putting a Band-Aid on it. Cause yeah, you can get better through some of those things, but this, and I'm only speaking to ayahuasca because that's all I've experienced. But it's just a rewiring of your neural pathways in your brain. And like, it's a complete, for me, I'm not saying that happens to everybody, but I think you have to go into it with the intention of wanting to change and wanting to heal yourself. And you have to do the work afterwards. You can't just go right back to what you were doing, or you're going to wind up right back in the same place, And so there has to be this desire, like, okay, I've had enough. You said I need help. I literally yelled out, screamed out, I need help during this ceremony. And it was a cry for help. And I was talking to God or the universe or whatever you like to say. And that prayer was answered, but I wanted to change, I really did. And I had enough. And God stepped into my life and changed that, and he gave me the help I was seeking, but I really had the heart to want to do it. So, it's, it's magic, but you have to also be a part of that, I don't know, wave the stick, the magic wand, whatever. You got to be a part of it. It's not gonna, so.
right. Yeah, that's a good way to extend that metaphor. It's like in Harry Potter, you have to have your wand, you have to point it in the right place, you have to say the right incantation in order to cast the spell. It's not just automatic. And so there is an element, a large element of the individual needing to put their own volition and their own effort into the process. And it's not easy, as I'm sure it's not easy even when you're in it. It's like,
it's the hardest thing I've ever done, man. It was the hardest thing, the worst and best thing, all wrapped into 4 days. So it was, it's a lot. So yeah, I'm kind of curious, like, since I haven't tried anything else, I know there's ibogaine, there's psilocybin, MDMA, all these different things. I don't know how many of those different modalities, or if that's even what you call them. things you've tried, and is there a big difference between each of them, or do you find them to be similar?
My personal stance is that what I've come to from experimenting with a number of different psychedelic substances is that they they all take you to the same place, but it's like it's giving you a different angle on the same thing. Like if you're looking at a sculpture and your nose is pressed right up to it, you're going to see the sculpture still, but you're seeing what you're seeing. And but then if you know, rappel down from the ceiling and are looking at it, you're going to see something different, but maybe you can tell it's the same sculpture. It's that same kind of thing where I feel like, you know, maybe the visuals and the flavor, so to speak, or the spirit is different between ayahuasca and mushrooms or peyote, but they're all they all show you the same place, which is, yeah, I mean, it's seeing yourself and seeing how you're embedded in the world, and you're seeing just the nature of the reality of the flux of the universe, that especially when you close your eyes, but even with open eyes, everything is moving. There's never any stillness in the psychedelic experience. Everything is crawling, everything is moving. And with the closed eyes, it's like, and with DMT in particular, everything is its own source of light. And so there's just other worlds, but yet, like I said, it's this world at the same time. So it's like this overlay that it lets you peek behind some curtain. And I don't know what the curtain is. I don't know what it is that I'm looking at behind it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason that the psychedelics are so healing is because they allow us to really see ourselves and to let go of it. Just like cuts through whatever story you're carrying. It just cuts right through it. And sometimes it can, you know, it can totally slap you in the face and make you real. But yeah, that experience of it, just like, here, look, see, it lets you see clearly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And that's a metaphor I'll use. Like we go through the world in our vehicles, and our windshields get crusted up with bug splatter and dirt and dust and ice and whatnot. And the psychedelic experience is just like turning on those wiper blades. It's like, oh yeah. And that's why it's remembering, because you're seeing something that you already know is there, but you're able to see it clearly again. So yeah, I think that all of the ways of experiencing the psychedelic experience, all of the different substances that will get you there, they all have something unique and distinct to offer, like the ceremonial context versus being with close friends versus dancing versus being alone with your eyes closed. It's all, they all have their own particular flavor and additive to the experience of life that's very unique and worthwhile. However, ultimately, it's doing the same thing, which is helping you see clearly and putting you back in touch with the implicit reality of love, because that is the fundamental nature. And I would say that is the same thing as that spiritual underpinning that I'm talking about. It is love. And so that's really what the healing comes from, is the felt experience of love. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I feel like so many, including myself, was missing that. And, yeah, during one of my experiences, it was like, I was having a very, very hard time and went up to one of the shamans and I told him, like, I was so sick and just couldn't get past myself, my ego, whatever it was that was blocking me. And I just told him, like, I feel like my heart is dead. And, she prayed, did whatever magic she did. And I went back to my bed and it was like, I don't know, of course you've heard of like sacred surgery or some of these things. And, you know, I, I received a new heart on that bed and I felt it. And like, it was the most overwhelming sense of love I've ever felt in my entire life. And it
Mhm.
was like I got a new heart. Literally the next day, my chest hurt like I had surgery. I'm not, like for real. And so, and yeah, I did. I got a new heart that day, and they start slow. That was on my second trip down there. It's like let's fix the worst to deal with, and then we'll work through these other things, and we'll improve you. A little at a time. And I'm not espousing to go do psychedelics constantly. That's not my jam. Like
Mm.
you do it, when you're called to do it. That's kind
Yeah.
of how I approach it. So. And by the way, I'm feeling called to do it. If my brother-in-law is listening, I'd be happy to go back down to Costa Rica. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, to feel the call, because there can't be an element of, you know, trying to convince somebody. I think that really has no place in this work. It really has to come intrinsically from the individual and feel the call and feel that it's time. And, we can obviously share our stories and share our being and how we've transformed through this experience and share information and extend an invitation. But it's work that has to be chosen. It has to be chosen. And I want to say one thing about the aspect of healing. And obviously these are extremely healing substances, and that's part of the core of their nature. And so oftentimes the psychedelics are referred to as medicines. And I think that's appropriate because medicine is something that helps us when we're sick. And so many people in this world are carrying a psycho-spiritual sickness that turns into self-loathing or depression or any number of things. However, I would say to only refer to it as medicine is actually too limited of a purview, because there is something beyond healing. And a lot of times in the conversations I hear around psychedelics, the healing is very emphasized, and rightly so, because people are sick and need healing. However, beyond healing is flourishing. And at that point, when, let's say, all of the major things I've accumulated in my story up until now are, for the most part, addressed or resolved or healed, beyond that, the psychedelic transforms from a medicine to a nutrient. It's like eating good, healthful food to keep your system strong and to help you go out into the world and do the work of helping others to flourish. And so to me, this is the stopping at healing is stopping short and actually moving beyond that so that we can move into flourishing and doing the work to help humanity flourish. Like you're saying, like you're doing this podcast at your own expense, and it's a service to the world to put your story out there and to have these conversations and to help people perhaps see something that they haven't seen before. And this is, I think, where we need to be going collectively as a human race is how do we live in service? How do we make our life our service? Because if we can do that, and if each of us can do that, and if we can at least have some semblance of an idea of what that can look like collectively, then we can address everything we need to address rather than being in this world of, constantly being in battles in some great culture war. We can aim ourselves, like weapons came from tools. Like a lot of weapons were originally farm tools.
Yeah.
And so can we turn those weapons back into farm tools and till the soil and grow this beautiful world that our collective vision can actually turn into a reality? I think that's what's next. That's where we're headed.
Yeah, I agree. And the place I went to, they referred to it as medicine, and they would call you up. We're now serving the next cup of medicine, and every time they would say that, I'd just kind of laugh, because once I understood it during my next two trips down there, I'm like, they are serving medicine and it is healing people. But I like the fact that you call it nutrient too, because you do need to keep nourishing yourself and your soul and learning and growing, and so yeah, you're giving yourself nutrients. And so I appreciate that. You have explained so many things to me. I need to be a part of the Portland Psychedelic Society. Is it limited to people in that area, or are you kind of all over the place?
I mean, it's cool that you're in Oregon, and hopefully we can actually connect someday.
Yeah.
That would be great.
I'd love to.
But we offer a number of online groups. And so people from all over the country and even people from other parts of the world tend to join those groups. And we try to have some kind of a balance because, people, the value of obviously getting together in a circle in the flesh is unmatched, but the value of having access, maybe you're living in some state where there's no conversations happening about psychedelics, and you can hop on and jump on a Zoom call and talk to people who can tell you something.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that is one of the services you're providing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
How do people sign up for that? Let's plug you.
Yeah, well, so portlandpsychedelic.org is the website, and all of our events for the time being, our hub is on Meetup. So meetup.com/psychedelic. That'll show you every single event we have going on, what's upcoming, what's recurring, and, what's online, what's in person, and people can get plugged in there.
Oh man, I'm going to be definitely checking out the website, but I'm going to try to make it up to meet you in person for sure. Cause it's a short drive. It takes me about 4.5 hours maybe. So I'll be coming up that way. I'm up there actually quite often. So,
Oh, right on.
I would love to come and meet you in person. Man, what am I missing? I know we could go on and on about this, but, we're just giving people a kind of a preview of what's out there to help them. And, if somebody's listening to this and they're dealing with trauma or pain or whatever the case, they're just interested in it and they've never done psychedelics like me, what would you say to them? Like,
I would say do your research. There's a double-edged nature of the so-called psychedelic renaissance where there's more and more access is growing. And that's amazing and important because these things have been suppressed for decades in the United States and really for, hundreds of years culturally, oftentimes kept in a priest caste and not allowed to be given to the populace. So there is a nature of suppression in the history of psychedelics that is being broken down, which is incredible. The other edge of that, however, is that now, there's thousands of accounts on Instagram selling whatever they're selling. And who knows what it actually is. And, there's been things recently with people selling mushroom chocolates or whatever, and there's really some other chemical compound in there. And it's, there are unscrupulous people who are going to and are taking advantage of this movement. And so I would say do your research and find people you can trust. And that's why something like a psychedelic society, which they exist all over the country and world. And there's an organization, the Global Psychedelic Society, that they have a map and they collate all of the groups that are out there. So you can find your local group, talk to people who actually have experience, get to know people, form a real human bond with people. That way you're not having to, out of desperation, order something off some person on Instagram and not know what it is. So I would say that, obviously if it's a white powder or something like MDMA can be, get it tested by a reputable lab or buy a test kit online. Dance Safe offers those. There's many other places. And know what you're putting in your body, know what your dosage is. And there's different philosophies on that, whether to just dive in the deep end completely or to dip your toes in. I can't say which is right. That's something that you'll have to learn for yourself as you explore this, but know how much and of what exactly you're putting in your body, and then be in an environment that you feel safe in, that there's not going to be any surprises. So that means with people that you trust implicitly, and or in a ceremonial context that is held, you'll most likely be there with strangers, but that the whole thing is held in safety. And trust yourself is the most important thing. Know that the experience is going to be unlike anything you've ever experienced. The closest analog would be dreaming, but it's also very, very different from dreaming. So it's going to be unlike anything you've ever experienced. And that can be scary, and it's okay to be scared. That's part of it, actually, is facing the fear and the ego, facing the possibility of being dissolved. But really trust yourself, find people you trust that can introduce you to it, or a reputable center or location or medicine practitioner or shaman or facilitator. There are many people out here doing the work of serving medicine. And again, that has its pluses and minuses, where there's like any profession in the world, probably half of the people doing it shouldn't be doing it. But who's to say where to draw that line? You need to trust yourself, trust your own intuition, trust your read of the person, get testimonials, but there are also so many people out here doing this work that are really excellent at it, who really care, who are putting their heart into growing their mushrooms, or when they're in the lab. And I think this movement will continue to provide other avenues for access. So if you only want to do it in a medical context, you'll be able to do it. If you only want to do it in a shamanic context, you'll be able to do it. If you only want to do it alone, you'll be able to do it. So yeah, The psychedelic movement is not stopping anytime soon. It's only growing, and that's going to come with its own set of risks and challenges. But ultimately, I think it will be one of the best things for humanity at this time.
I concur. Keith, you've given me so much knowledge today and so much wisdom. Man, I'm sad I just met you today. I literally, okay, you're doing good work, and I appreciate what you're doing and spreading this message and helping people and healing people. And as I tell many people, like I feel like you're doing God's work and you're trying to help humanity. So keep after it, and I will spread the message as well as best I can. And if you're listening out there, please, yes, do your own research and you know, but if you're looking for healing, this is one avenue to look into. So thank you very much. And I guarantee you I'll be talking to you again. So all right.
That was great, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks.